Waiting for brother Rodcore. Let me make sure. We'll be rocking some madness out in this madness. What's up, Horror Flicks and Chill? How you doing, man? Let me make sure the brother's here. Hold on. Let me invite him. Oh, there.
Boom, boom, boom,
Yeah, what's up, brother? How are you, man?
Oh, you know what? I have no complaints. How you doing?
Rockin' madness, homeboy.
Yes, sir.
Hey, check this out. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh when I see when you see what's about to happen up in here,
Uh-oh.
man.
Oh, snap.
Uh-oh, it's about to. It's. I got a little something special for you.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'm going to tag some people that I would like and hope can join this interview because I really want them to see what you're doing. So I'm tagging them in the comments while you were getting yourself together and ready.
Oh
Let's
yeah,
see.
I'm ready right now.
Uh,
It's gonna take just a little bit. If you want me to wait, I can do that. But what's
no,
up?
no, man. Do your thing, baby. Keep going. Keep going. I'm going to keep going too.
Here we go.
Uh,
Right here. Happy birthday to
hey.
you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Rodcore. Happy birthday to you. Ha ha. Yeah. November babies in the house. Happy birthday, man.
Hey, man,
My head is so
appreciate
big
you,
I couldn't
bro.
even fit the birthday cake.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Oh, snap. That was awesome. That will probably go down as my best birthday thing yet, other than my daughter singing to me. So that was a good one.
Man, yeah, I had to lay that one on you, man. Original Odd Rocker, happy birthday, homeboy.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. Much appreciated. So
Man,
how are you today, sir?
I'm blessed, man. I'm rocking madness. I'm cool, real cool, man. It's an honor to have you on here, bro. Like seriously,
No,
dude.
no, I'm serious in saying the honor is mine. So before we
Wow.
start, though, I want to ask you to do one thing.
What's that?
I want you to tell everybody about this YouTube channel
Oh,
because
y-
these interviews are super important. I think people need to see them. After we get done with ours, I'm gonna put a link on our social media to it as well, so people can go watch the other interviews. But if you can explain a little bit about it now as well, and just hit people and get them up to speed.
most definitely, man. One second. We got a YouTube channel, and this right here, this Black History of Rock and Roll is to highlight a lot of us that have not only innovated and also just created rock and roll because we are, as being a foundational Black American myself, I come from the culture of that. We all come from the culture of that. People don't look at Black people as indigenous to rock and roll. They don't look at us as something that actually started rock and roll. And then for the ones that know, they don't think that we still participate. So people like yourself and me and all the other brothers and sisters that I've been like either doing entries on or basically interviewing are a representation and an example of that. Because for me, it's very important. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
just that people know, and like to have people like you and to have people like Hadley Morell and Eugene Robinson and Militia and so many others that I've had on here. Some of these guys, some of these cats are still rocking now, but then there's some cats that have gone unsung too, which that's another reason I do what I do. But we got the YouTube channel. We have this page to highlight all that. So that's where I'm coming from in that. I don't know if I hope that explained everything, but check out our YouTube, man. We need more followers on that. I started it a few years ago. I have a few entries that I've done, kind of ghetto, but hey, representing. But then
Shoot,
also
hey, you
like,
did it. That's what counts.
oh yeah, man. It's I feel like there needs to be all hands on deck. I was so happy to hear some things positive from that. Like people have been telling me, you know, I did an interview with Raymondo, who was from the band Death Cult, and which that band actually formed into the Cult later on. And so many
Right.
of that band's fan base were really happy that I found that drummer. They thought he was deported because that's what his Wikipedia says. And I have an interview with him on there, you know. Also, like Hadley Morell, who doesn't get a lot of props, and he's still rocking. Hadley is still going on, man. This brother's worked. I mean, he was a teenager when he was recording people in Arizona. You know, with the whole garage rock scene out there in Arizona in the '60s, and then he did stuff with Carl Weathers and James Brown. I mean, and he's still rocking. He just finished recording a band in the Philippines. You know, shouts to Hadley, man. I'm just
See,
happy, man.
that's what I'm talking about. And I think just, you know, in the history of Africans on this continent, in this planet, there's always the history of the griot, the person that tells the history or documents the history. And for, you know, brothers and sisters doing rock, there is not enough, to me, oral history. There's not enough interviews. There's not enough of anything to tie it all together. And I find watching these interviews that you've done, there's so much that we all have in common, no matter if you came up here in LA or if you're in Chicago, if you're in Detroit, like all of the struggles and the pains and the joys, most of all, are so similar that we all go through, you know, for our love for this music, which is our music, and that we should naturally love, but we're almost trained from infancy to hate, or it's demonic, or it's not black people music, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. We're trained almost from the time that we're infants that we should not be into this music, and for those of us that are and that feel it's a natural thing to do, these documents, these video documents, any written material. I just finished this book. Uh, this is a great book, Black Punk Now, by James Spooner
Dr.
on Instagram. I believe
James.
he's at Spooners No Fun is his Instagram. But hearing the stories and all the different tales, uh, that's important, man. That helps future generations. And for guys like me, when I was coming up, there was nothing. There was no internet, no way to connect with different people, no way to find out who your brethren in the scene were. So, you know, to me, this is like the greatest time to be alive. Like we can all connect. We can do an
Yeah.
Instagram live, we could chat, we can chop it up, we can talk about anything we want to talk about. And it's so comfortable and so great because remarkably, even in 2023, we still need each other. We still need to support each other and tell each other, hey, you know what? If you don't want to play the game, you don't want to rap, you don't want to dress a certain way, you want to wear leather jackets with patches of all your favorite bands, it's okay.
Yep.
It's okay. And it's sad we got to still do that in this day and age. And I find we are the ethnic group the most that still has the issues, both within the scene and without the scene, within our own culture, than I think any other ethnic group that want to get involved with rock and roll or this kind of music.
Yeah, we have a long history of a lot of struggle, and even with that struggle comes with, I mean, even culturally, we look at a lot of things like we create and then we move on, and then
Yeah.
when certain things are co-opted, it seems like, well, that's theirs. You know, like I can't say in all aspects, but that's one thing that I get from that because I was, you know, even pre-internet, I was, you know, being a punk rocker myself, coming up as a teen, you know, and just being in the rock in general as a kid and as a teen. I was lucky enough to have parents that were into that stuff too. But like, yeah, it was hard, man. People thinking that you're crazy, wanting to keep their kids away from you because you had spiked hair and makeup on and stuff. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And your song, that song, Ghetto Outcast, that song, you know what I'm talking about. That hits it right on the nail.
Absolutely. I'm gonna tell you something, man. When I was younger, I used to have sort of a dreadlock mohawk. Actually, it was if you ever seen the singer of Faith No More, my hair was pretty much almost the first singer, I should say, Chuck
Chuck
Mosley.
Mosley. Yep.
My hair was pretty much exactly like his, and I'll never forget um, my family in Dallas, which is where all my family is from. I grew up in California and was born here. All my family's back in Texas, so I went back in the this was the late '80s for a family function, family reunion, and I was wearing, sleeveless t-shirt, no big deal, but I had these jeans and I had holes in the jeans, and then I had fishnets on underneath the jeans, so you could see
Oh
the
Lord.
fishnets in the holes, and then Doc Martens. And when I showed up, I mean, first of all, the airport, like just walking through the airport was like culture shock, because now I'm like, oh snap, I'm really in Texas, and they are really not. This ain't LA no more. So I'm already getting like looked at like they want to kill me at the airport. We leave, I go to my relative's house, and then I got to deal with all my relatives looking at me. And, at that time in the late 80s, not too many people had dreads, period, never mind like a dreadlock mohawk. So everybody's like, oh, what is all this? Is that you trying to get wavy hair like white people? And I'm like, bro. And it was just like, oh my God, I could not wait to get out of there and get back to LA. And I'm like, I know eventually I'm sure they'll come around and see this is probably going to be the wave of the future. But back then, it was just like, I mean, it was nuts. It was
Yeah,
nuts.
you're pretty much an alien back then, bro. Like, I mean,
Yes.
seriously, like, and I got into punk and hardcore around that time, late 80s, very early 90s, and it was still like that.
Yeah.
I hear all my older punk friends talk about how it was in the 70s, but I could only go by my own experiences and just the things that either being picked on or getting, I got in a fight, someone who was not only not cool with me being a punker, but also black. So he
Right.
called me the N-word and it was on. And just, I'm not even that type of dude that would, cost it. But yeah, I know exactly how you feel, man. Cat's like, what's up, Dave Branscombe? I see you, man.
Yeah, Big
No,
Dave.
you see
Big
David?
Dave. That's being. See, I'm. Excuse my language. Dave. I'm gonna fuck with you someday. We're gonna do something, man.
Yeah,
Something in my
yeah.
heart is telling me I need to work with this brother. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but Dave, we gonna do it, man. I much respect. I see your family, and I love what you're doing as a human being, bro. But
Solid brother.
going back to what you're saying, see, I go back even a little further than that because my first entree into punk was around '81,
Wow.
and probably a lot of the people watching this weren't even born then. So in '82, what we were dealing with, first of all, everybody hated punk, period.
Man.
Punks were like the white N words. So to be black and to be punk was something. It was an adventure in the early '80s, and I can remember at that time I lived in like right around La Brea in Washington, which if you don't live in LA is probably like the tip of sort of where South Central starts before you start moving like south and deeper into it. And that was right as the crack boom was taking off. So at that time, you had a big convergence of the explosion of crack. You had punk. You had gangs that were now like fighting within each other because at first it was
Yep.
Crips and Bloods, and it was usually territorial issues. But now you had Crip gangs fighting Crip gangs and Blood gangs fighting Blood gangs
Man.
over who's going to make the most money selling dope, where they were going to sell it, and squabbles like that. Because guys now were like, well, shit, I can become, I can have thousands of dollars in my pocket in a week. Like it was just
Wow.
a crazy boom. So walking through, I remember one time in I want to say '84. I had a leather jacket, and I hadn't. My intention was to patch it up, but I hadn't patched it yet. So it was a clean new leather jacket, and I was going to break it in first. And I was walking through the hood. I had a frohawk at that point, a little like tiny strip. It hadn't grown out much, but it was definitely like nobody was checking for that. And these two guys rolled up alongside to me as I was walking to a bus, walking to catch the bus to a gig. And one of them was like, hey, nigga, nice jacket, nice jacket. And I'm like, ah. So I'm kind of in a residential area and I'm about 100 feet to get into a public street. So now I'm thinking to myself, what do I do? So I'm like, okay, if nobody pulls a gun, then I'm just fighting. So that's what it is. So I'm walking, I'm like, thanks, bro. And the other one was like, yeah, that looked good on me. That look real good on me. And then the other one's like, yeah, that jacket would look real good on you, homie. But maybe it would look good on me. So I was like, well, this motherfucker ain't gonna look good on nobody but me. And so they stopped and I kept walking and then I heard them start again. So I just turned around and I bum rushed them. We got into it and thankfully I came out on the top of that.
Man,
So that that happened. I was feeling good. I go to this show. It was Fear at the Palladium. I get up
dang,
in there and to this day, that is one of the rowdiest, wildest crowds I have ever seen at a gig. Like ambulances were there after the show. So I get there, and of course, you know what happens? Fear. So you know what happens when I get up in there? There's
bonehead, huh?
always one
Yep.
that want to be like, "Hey, nigger, what are you doing here?"
Oh, hell
So
no.
I'm like, "Okay, I got to serve you up too." So that one night for me, I tell my oldest son is kind of on the alternative slash punk slash skate tip. So we had these conversations, and I told him that one night was the illustration in general of what the average black punk had to deal with then. If
Wow.
it wasn't from going through stuff from the hood, just walking the street, it was going through these gigs. And for the most part, I'm not going to say I had a problem at every gig, but white kids can go to gigs and not have that kind of issue at all. And it's tough enough when, as a punk, you're aligned with guys that are already dealing with. We had issues with the police. My first show was a Dead Kennedy show. In
Wow.
that show, they lobbed in tear gas. And because a few people got too drunk and broke windows. I mean, I get the cops showing up, but I mean, they lobbed in tear gas like we were a bunch of terrorists. The
That's
whole
crazy.
crowd pushes against the wall. We're trying to figure out what to do. We go out the door, and there's got to be between cops in cars, cops on motorcycles, and cops on horses. There's like probably close to 100 cops here. And I tell people I grew up in the hood, and that's the first time I saw Rodney King style beating was outside of that gig. They were grabbing kids randomly and just beating the shit out of them. They could just be walking, going to their car, and they grab them just ah. So it was a wild time, and in those days, pre-internet, all you could do was see the occasional other black punk at the shows, but unfortunately, a lot of those punks had what I like to call magic Negro syndrome, which is they didn't really want to be seen with you. They wanted to be like the special, I'm not one of them Negroes with their buddies, so you couldn't bond with them. The only exception to this rule was the crew from Fishbone. And those brothers, man, I don't know if you've seen them like close up, but there's not a one of the OG lineup that's under 6'2". So they would show up at these gigs. They were these tall dudes. Walt, who I spent many wonderful years with in Year of the Dragon, um, he'll probably kill me for saying this publicly, but he is gang affiliated. He's a Crip.
Oh, I'm not
So
surprised. A lot of
yeah,
brothers are,
yeah. Yeah, so Walt was definitely like, I'm not coming to these gigs taking no shorts from anybody, but they would show up between them and friends and roadies. They would show up at a gig like 13, 14 deep, and nobody would come near them. You'd see them, what nobody calling them the N word, was nobody doing nothing. And Fish, the drummer in particular, was like, he was cool if you knew him. but if you didn't know him, he was a cat that would punch you out like on sight if you even like dreamed of saying something cross to him. So those were like the only cool guys on the scene, but there was a little bit of a disconnect from for me to them, like as far as getting to know them personally at that time, because they were kind of like we are. They weren't snobby, but they were definitely like we got our own thing going. So it was a little bit of a lonely time, and like I said, that's why it makes me so like I'm smiling right now out of joy because I see you, and all I gotta do is look at your face, look at your glasses, which I normally wear glasses too. I'm nearsighted, so I don't need them right now. But here, let me you rocking specs, bro. Yeah, yeah, that's what it is. So it makes me so happy to see. You know, I've watched every single interview you've done. I have nothing but respect for you even undertaking this.
Man, I'm more than honored, man. Like I feel like I'm some to be honest, and I probably shouldn't say this. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed because I'm in awe like of what you guys are doing, and just it's an honor to do this. I really am seriously honored by even the fact that you're sitting down with someone like myself, and just like it's really cool, man. I mean, especially being a kid growing up off of the kind of stuff that we have, and finding brothers and sisters that are veteranos, like basically doing this stuff like yourself, and then compatriots like my homie, my homegirl, Culture Rock Griot,
Yeah.
and Nikki Noor from Black Rockers United and Black Rock Radio, and the homie Ogun Prime from Black Musicians
Oh,
Rocket
Hogan. I
Lexicon.
love that dude.
He's a he's a solid dude, man. I
Yeah,
love that guy too. Me and
is
him have had conversations.
man. Um and oh, real quick, I want to shout out A Daryl Moten. What's up, bro? I see you on there. This is a brother from Iowa who's doing his thing there. I love this guy. He's like one of the most amazing people that I've met online. So I just had to shout him out real quick. So Daryl, I see you, Daryl Zero. What up, bro? Um, I'm trying to see who else is on here because there's a Genius Boozy. Now this guy, you ought to check him out sometime. He's a trucker, and he'll just pull over and randomly tape himself doing remixes on guitar or bass of other people's songs, and they are so dope. They
I
are
gotta check that out.
so dope. So check out my man there, Browntown Media, great comic book artist.
Oh wow.
Um, Pretty good guitarist too as well. Uh, hey Setor, I see you, bro. And Jay Obsolete, my man. There was a lot of cool people on this thread right now. I'm sorry. I'm just saying.
Nah, it's cool, man. I love giving shout outs, and I love when the artists give the shout outs too, man. That's so cool. I'm just glad that all y'all cats are here, just check out this interview with me and Rodcore, man, and shoot, chime in whenever you guys want too. This is an open forum. I mean, I'm doing the interview, but at the same time, if you got something to say, please do. Like it's been an honor,
Yes,
you
please,
know.
please. All questions welcome. So, my brother, what questions might you have for me?
Man, well, you mentioned a few things that kind of had me, and I got a bunch of them. First, so how did you get into music in general?
So, just from, like a lot of black households in the history of America, like music has always been part of the thread of my upbringing. So, my mom, my parents divorced early. My dad didn't seem like he was really a music guy, but my mom loved everything from, you could, in my adolescence, listen to anything in our house from Barry White to Janis Joplin. So early on, I was listening to all that stuff. And then even a lot of the so-called, traditional black artists of the 70s, like, the Isley Brothers and Rufus, and a lot of those guys are already flirting kind of with the rock
Oh
thing
yeah.
anyway. And I found as I got older, I was starting to lean towards stuff that had like keyboard, like heavy, weird keyboards or solo guitar solos, or more instrumental breaks than just typical pop or dance music. So by the time I grew up pretty much in all black areas until, or I still lived in one, but at the junior high level, I started getting bused to a white school. So in the seventh grade, it was my first real exposure to white people that wasn't on TV or wasn't like a quick interaction like at a store or anything like that. So once I got up in there and started getting to meet more white people, they would, play music that they liked. And at that time, it was a lot of, Led Zeppelin was the big thing. Blue Oyster Cult, like as far as like heavier stuff, which I always kind of gravitated toward anyway. I always liked whatever pushed the envelope or whatever was extreme but still sounded good. So I was starting to kind of make that cultural crossover then, and then by the time I got to high school, um, the punk thing was starting to break, and there was a show that used to come on here called New Wave Theater, that was hosted by this guy Peter Ivor. That
Rest
unfortunately,
in
and it was
peace.
funny because yeah, I met that guy once, and he was
Man.
big, man. He was like 6'4", solid
Really?
guy in shape. Yeah, he was a big guy. So it was really, and everyone in the scene knew he was like a black belt in karate. And as
Wow.
I had started studying martial arts as a junior in high school, so it was like, I'd had a couple of conversations with him about it, and I felt like he knew what he was doing. So I just found it so ironic he was killed in his sleep.
Yeah.
Um,
That's messed up.
yeah, yeah. For those who don't know what we're talking about, there was an early show that documented punk in LA called New Wave Theater that was hosted by this guy named Peter Ivers. And the show stopped when he got killed. Somebody broke into his loft downtown here in LA, and they hit him with the brick while he was sleeping. So he died in his sleep. Because I know if he had a chance to wake up and defend himself, he probably would have beat up the guy. But that show was very important. You can find a lot of those clips on YouTube. But he introduced a lot of bands, and when I started seeing like bands like Gaza X, some of the early guys, Dead Kennedys, X, the Weirdos, and I'm like, what the? And you'd see like the crowds going crazy, and it looked scary, and I was like, ooh, I don't think I could ever do that or be there. But at the same time, I was like, oh, I was super intrigued, and I was starting to already like get into bands like the Cars that were like new wave, and Devo. They were kind of like just at that demarcation line of like pop and punk, and like Talking Heads and bands like that. They were like right at the edge. So um, at one point, I had gotten deep into this band called the Stranglers,
I
who
like
to
the
this day,
Strangler.
yeah, they're one of my favorite bands. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to take the plunge, because I also, this time was probably about my late late in the 10th grade. There was two kids that had gone full tilt into punk, and they were like bomber jackets, skinheads.
Wow.
Like you couldn't miss them walking down the street. Rolled up cuffs, and one was named Ken and one was named Jeff. Jeff was actually in a old school band called Savage Republic that some people may know.
Yeah, those guys are
Um,
awesome. I've seen them live once.
yeah,
Find
yeah.
a
So
square
he started
now.
that band,
Wow.
and it's funny now because he's a college professor somewhere back east. Um, but they were all full tilt, and people used to look at them and like they were like pieces of shit, and I would look at them like, man, that I'm just like super intrigued. So I went to for my it was probably another year later. I went to see X at the Roxy, and that was a pretty wild show. Um, and I remember watching the pit go crazy, and I'm like, I want to get in it, but I'm kind of scared. And I don't want to get no fight or nothing because I couldn't tell what the vibe was yet. And finally, I waited till the last song and I jumped in the pit, and it was just like in the Fishbone movie, Everyday Sunshine. I remember Angelo saying something like, yeah, when I got in the pit, it was like exercising demons. And when he said that, that was the first thing that popped in my mind about that first show, because that's what it felt like. It was like cathartic. Had no incidents with anybody tripping off my race or anything like that. It was so cool and so fun. And I was like, how can you go to a show and build an instant bond with your fellow crowd members like that? I had never seen anything like that. And I was intrigued. And then my second show was that Crazy Dead Kennedy show that I told you about.
Man.
And that show should have scared me off, but I was even more so like, yeah, I am in like Flynn, baby. This is what it's about. So I did a deep dive, and then I didn't want to play music. I just wanted to go to shows, and then I started getting intrigued by the idea because I was reading a magazine, which you probably know of, called Flipside.
Yeah.
And in
That's how I got in
Flipside, the common
hardcore.
theme, yeah. And I mean, the common theme seemed to be like you didn't have to wait and train for years to play an instrument or even know how to sing to front a band. So then it started turning it over in my head. And I'm like, I think I want to be in a band. And I'm looking at some of these guys, oh, and I'm like, they still, to me, even for all the aggro and a lot of them felt like suburban white kids that hadn't gone through anything, and it was just like a pose. And
Wow.
early on for me, like that's always been repulsive to me. I don't care if you do pop, just mean it. Just like be there, be in the moment, like be about it. So one crazy week, or actually it was about a week and a half span, but in that week and a half, I saw in a row Black Flag with Rollins, Bad Brains, Fishbone,
Man.
and the Circle Jerks,
Wow.
all within a week and a half span. And after that, I'm like, these guys, like me, they done been through some stuff. Like this is not a game to them. And that made me immediately want to pick up a mic and do it. And back then, it was not. I didn't know how you connected with musicians or how you did it. So I was in a lot of bands that really didn't lead to anything or do anything. So, but it was good training ground as far as like how to be in front of a crowd, how to relax, how to give it your all, but still like not give so much that your voice is gone, how to be present, how to work an audience. So that's what those early days were about for me. And
Any demos or anything from any of those bands that you have?
no, that's the thing. Back then, you didn't even really have like adequate recording equipment. You know what I mean? Like you might have a little tape deck you could record a rehearsal with,
That's what I was
but I don't even.
wondering too.
Yeah, I am terrible about keeping that stuff. I just recently found, or not even me, like a friend I was in a band with recently discovered some old stuff that we did. So I have stuff from bands I was in. A band I almost got signed to Sony with in the 90s called Sons of the Sun,
Huh.
um, which was it was my first all black band, and they were I'd seen Rage Against the Machine, and I'm kind of like let's do an all black version, but like super duper political, and not metaphors or not in like let's get straight to the point. So I'm a practicing Christian now. I give God all the praise and glory proudly. But back
I am
then,
too, believe it or not.
now no, I do. There is no believe it or not. I believe it, brother. But back then I was not. So I mean, I had a song that was again like I can't even repeat the words I said in that song about the Bible. I would never do it. Um, but I had written songs about the fear and the desire of white women for black men. That fine line between fear and wanting to cross that line into something else. I had tackled a bunch of different subjects. So I have some demos from those bands, but it's I don't even listen to them. I have them just as historical documents. They were where I was then. But I'm in a whole different place in life now, and I have a whole different belief system in general about a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Uh, so I'm wholly uninterested in those times, other than they were all stepping stones to help me get to today. Because I truly believe all we have is right. All I have is right now. We could get off this live, and I could have a heart attack. I could walk out the door and get hit by a car. All I have is now. All that matters is now. So I'm always about like what I'm doing right this moment, and for me, that's hope theme.
Man, I was gonna ask about, so that's what I was gonna say next. But one thing, don't go nowhere. I gotta fix something on my phone real quick. I didn't realize it was on. It's gonna take a
Fix it.
second. Don't go nowhere.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna continue to see who's on this live. Ray, man, nothing but respect. Um,
There we go.
Vampiro Punk. Hello to JDBT Smith. What up? Um, Lots of bollocks. I love that name. Oh, McNursey, I didn't even see you. What's up, Aaron? Um, so in regards to the music, the only thing I would say to me that matters in regards to how it relates to today is I didn't know how to be a serious musician until I did my audition for Faith No More.
I was gonna ask
So
about that. Let's
yeah,
hear that story.
so this is a funny story. I'll try to make it short. I was at a friend of mine's house named Jessica, and we were watching TV, just hanging out, and her boyfriend, or another mutual friend of ours, boyfriend delivered pizzas. And so he calls me and he's like, "Hey, uh, I just delivered a pizza to Chuck Mosley, and he said he's not in Faith No More anymore." They hadn't publicly announced it yet. And I'm like, "Word?" Because at that time, like, Introduce Yourself was like one of my top 10 records. I loved it, still do. I still love that record. And I was bummed out. I'm like, damn, because I'd seen him a couple of times, and just the way he was on stage, I'm like, this is one of the greatest frontmen I've ever seen. And I still maintain that Chuck Mosley's stint in Bad Brains
I like
is,
that live that I heard. I tripped out. I'm like, wow.
it makes sense,
Yeah, that's
right? I didn't think it would.
dude.
Like, thinking about it, I'm like, no way. And then when I
It
actually
was,
saw it, I'm like, this is probably better or as good as anything he did with Faith No More. Like, that would have
man.
worked. But anyway, so my friend whose house I was at, she was like, wouldn't that be a trip? Because at the time I had the dreadlock mohawk. So she was like, wouldn't that be a trip if you could actually get an audition with them? And I'm like, you know what? Yeah. So they were on Slash Records, and I called Slash, and I was like, I know nothing's been announced. I know it's not official, but I heard Chuck Mosley is not in the band anymore. So I would like to see if I could audition. So I talked to their producer, Matt Wallace, and he was like, well, come by the office and drop off a demo tape so I can hear how you sound. So I was like, cool. So the next day I went, and when Matt saw me, because I looked so much like Chuck, like the vibe, African American, dreadlock, mohawk. He was like, "Oh my God!" He was like, "Oh my God!" He called up the bass player Billy right away and was like, "Bro, I have somebody in my office who I think could fit the bill. Hopefully, he can sing. I'm gonna have him come up there in the next day, and you guys are gonna work him out and just let me know how it goes." So he was stoked. So I went up there, and by the way, all of this is actually detailed. I think I might even have. Yes, I do. So there's an official biography on Faith No More. Very good book. I'm actually in here on page, I want to say 20.
That's so
Like my
cool.
whole audition is detailed in this book. So anyway, I go up there, and of course they're on the same tip when they see me. They're like, "Oh my god, it's great! This is gonna work." So they gave me. Oh, well, first of all, here's what's I gotta say what's funny about this, especially compared to now. They had, I don't know if you know San Francisco well, but their rehearsal hall they shared with another band in Richmond. And in like the worst part of Richmond is like Compton, but like the
Oh,
worst part of Compton. And so they were like, we have to go rehearse during the day, and we got to track the time because sometimes we get someone to rehearsal, we forget, and we start drinking, we forget to look at the time, but we got to be out of here before nightfall. Like all the dope fiends and the crack sellers and all the crime heads and all that shit happens when the sun goes down. So they were like, we have to be out by 5. So we're gonna take the bus over, and now that tripped me out too because nobody had a car. So we all pile. First, I go to Billy Gould, and the keyboard is Roddy Bottom's place, which is at this abandoned pet hospital in the middle of downtown San Francisco. So
what the heck?
yeah, there's like 8 rooms in this place, and there's different roommates and whatnot. And so I meet him and Roddy Bottom, and then they take me to the roof, and they're like, check this out. And on the roof, there's these cages full of all these abandoned, mummified animals. So like, look, they left this behind when they left the pet hospital. Like they didn't take these animals with them. And so I'm like, oh shit, this is interesting. Okay. So I'm like, yeah, I just want to go on to the audition now because I was honestly horrified, but I'm trying to keep a cool face because I'm trying to get in with them. So we grab a bus, we take it to the rehearsal spot, we get in, and they had a cheap little boom box. That was what shocked me too, because I'm like, I'm sure they got some kind of high tech recording equipment. I didn't know how a signed band operates, or and I'm thinking since I've already heard, we care a lot on the radio, like they're bigger than they are, but they're still like, no, we're kind of at the low point, and we're still paying our dues a little. It was like we don't have to worry about a day job, but we got barely enough to pay our rent and buy groceries. So we, thankfully we have cool roommates. So he puts on the boom box, and then he's like, well, what do you want to sing? And then I'm like, I'm not doing with Caroline because I'm sure like anybody that's come in before me has done that. And I'm thinking they've had dozens or more people than me come in, but I forgot they hadn't even announced yet that they didn't have a singer, that Chuck had left. So the only person that had been in before me was Chris Cornell.
Huh.
And they tried him, and his whole thing was not, it was great, but it wasn't fitting to their music. And Soundgarden was kind of taking off. So they were like, basically, thank you for trying. And what I did not know when I went in was that from day one, as soon as Chuck was out, their guitar player, Jim Martin, was like, we got to get this guy, Mike Patton. So he was lobbying for Patton from day one. But when Billy saw me and when Matt saw me, they were like, well, let's try this guy because he still looks closer to Chuck. And if he can sing, it's even better. So I got the most audition time of anybody, Chris included, uh, other than Mike Patton. We rehearsed together for 4 days, and I thought we were clicking and hitting. And again, basically, it came down to their guitar player Jim Martin saying, "No, I'm telling you guys, I want Mike Patton or I'm out." And he wasn't at the auditions. It was just their drummer Mike, bassist Billy, keyboardist Rod, and Jim wasn't there because before Chuck Mosley had left, him and Chuck got into a fight, and he punched him and broke his hand. So he was recovering from surgery on that hand. So I didn't
Wow.
even get to meet him, but I mean, when those 3 guys played, it didn't even matter. It sounded like a full band, and they were turned up to like 11.
Man.
And to this day, Mike Borden slash Puffy is a drummer who hits the snare harder than any drummer that I've ever heard. And he said it was because he studied African drumming from this famous African drummer whose name I can't remember.
Wow.
But I mean, he would just tap that bitch in rehearsal. And I would jump 10 feet because it sounded like a drum shot.
Like
And
a big djembe.
yeah, man, it scared the
Awesome.
crap out of me. So I didn't get the gig. The right person got it, by the way, and I will never say that the right person did not get it, because I'm a huge Mike Patton fan now. But what I learned from them was about how to be professional, how to be a band, how to structure rehearsals, what your expectations should be from your bandmates, if you're serious, and basically how to conduct your band as a business, and not just with guys that are getting together playing and hoping for the best. Like how to make that thing actually uh, function as a business to be, even if you're not making money in the short term. Like all the guys in Faith No More that I met, I didn't meet Jim, but again I met Billy, bassist, Roddy, keyboardist, Mike, drummer. All those guys to a T were focused, and they were like, we are going to do this. Everything we're doing is centered around us. We're going to rehearse this much during the week. We're going to write at these times. Like they had that shit down to a science.
Wow.
So that was the first place I learned to be a band. And for Ray, yes, that was around 91, 92. Most
Man.
of the songs that we went through are 60% of the songs that you hear on the album, The Real Thing, but of
Wow.
course with my own different lyrics. And apparently there was one point where Faith No More played here, and I got in the bassist Billy, who remembers me still, to get me in the show. And I asked him if he still had the cassettes of those recordings of my audition. He was like, yeah, I got them. He's like, they sound pretty good. I'm like, damn, I would love to hear that, but I didn't want to ask.
Man. Shoot, man. Man, you should ask him, like, hey, could I get a copy of that?
No, man, I can't. Not yet. I will at some point, but I have. It's it's a weird dynamic. I'll know when it's time to ask. I
Yeah,
just know it's not right
I
now.
understand.
Yeah.
So when did Year of the Dragon come up? Was that Walt and Spacey T? Like how did that come about, and then you getting involved with those cats?
So Year of the Dragon, I actually set up before I met Walt. And my deal was, I'm trying to make a long story short. At one point, I was a crack addict, to be quite frank with you. And when I say that, I mean homeless, dirty, eating, sleeping in dumpsters, eating out of dumpsters. The guy at the gas station, like, I wash windows. Um, uh, I was that guy. So I had to go to rehab. And that was in 96, after almost 2 years of just insanity. So in that time, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to play music. I'm done. I'm getting a straight job. I'm going to be a normie. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So when I got out of rehab and I was all straightened out and everything was cool, a friend of mine was like, I'm doing a cover band. Do you want to just, nothing heavy duty. We'll just play covers. And I'm like, that sounds great. I just want to play music and not think about like having to make it. So we started rehearsing and we did a show. After we did that show, it was like, fuck, I gotta do it again. So what happened was I had a friend named Ron. What's Ron's last name? Oh my God. Well, it doesn't matter. His first name is Ron. Black guitar player, really cool guy. And Ron had played on what I had come up with as a concept idea, which is to do a rock album like rappers do. Just get different musicians, write different songs with them, and put it out as sort of a concept project. So I have a whole Year of the Dragon record out there like that has nothing to do with Walt. And so I put that out, and I was like, maybe I'll do shows behind it, maybe not. Um, but then I ended up not doing anything. It just kind of was like I didn't know enough about how to promote a record, how to push it out to the public or anything like that yet, because it was still like the kind of the new era of bands being able to manufacture their own CDs and put it out, and it was still like the era where there wasn't enough internet or information out there like that for people to be able to just be like, all right, I got to put it out. I got to market it. I got to sell it anywhere I can. Like, I didn't know none of that stuff. I thought I was going to put it out and it's either going to happen or not. So I put it out, and of course, nothing happened. So I was like, cool. But then Ron was a huge Spacey T fan and knew him personally. So when Spacey T left Fishbone, him and Walt left at the same time. And what they decided to do was get with the bass player of Spacey's first big band, which was Sound Barrier, which was, as you know, and a lot of people know, like the first serious black metal band. Like they're all black hair metal band in the mid to late 80s. And so they were like, we're going to revive Sound Barrier, but we're going to do it with two vocalists, and it's going to be like harder. It's going to be more toward the heavier, rock thing than like the rock without the room. Like, no, we're not doing that. So they decided they wanted two vocalists, and Ron was like, I want to introduce you to Spacey to see if you'll fit in this new Sound Barrier thing. So I'm like, straight. So I went, and I didn't know Walt was going to be there. I didn't even know Walt was a part of it. And when I got there, it was in the bass player Stanley's apartment, and then Walt's there, and I'm like, is that Dirty Walt? Yeah, man, what's going on? Nice to meet you, bro. So we shake, and I'm like immediately messed up, and I'm like, I'm like, oh my god, I'm wow. So they put on a song, and they're like, all right, so this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna write lyrics like right now. We're gonna record what you write, and then we'll see what happens. So I'm like, and I have never been good at that kind of stuff, but they put on something that was so banging that I was like, wow. And it was easy. And I wrote them lyrics out, and I banged out the track, and Walt came in and did something else, and I did something else, and we were just going back and forth, and me and him just had a chemistry like pow, like right away from the jump. And I'm like, we can do this. We can do this. So we started recording a bunch of stuff that nobody has ever heard still. And I swear I wish they would put some of that stuff out, because it is like some of it is truly next level. It's like, actually, fun fact, Ghetto Outcast was part of those sessions.
Wow.
And Tracy was like, so I'll get to how we got to that. So anyway, at one point, the original drummer from Sound Barrier couldn't do it, so we didn't have a drummer. And then the bass player Stan, who was recording everything, he had the recording set up. His oldest son died of sickle cell, so he was a little messed up behind that, and he was like, we got to take a break on this music stuff, because I can't even focus on that right now. So it was weird, because we had been recording we had basically almost an album's worth of material, and I'm like, well, we have enough to kind of like start mixing what we have and maybe find a drummer to play on it. But Stan was like, didn't want to do nothing. He didn't want anybody to touch it if he wasn't doing it. And he was just like, I can't do this right now. I can't, I'm grieving. So 3 months had passed. And for me, I'm like, I invested all this time, all of this energy. Walt had done the same. Tracy had done the same. So I was like, well, look, while we're waiting, why don't we do something else? And Walt was like, yeah, sure, what? And then I talked to Tracy. Tracy, you want to get with me, we can record some songs, we'll put it out and see how it does. So we're doing something to stay busy until Stan's ready to work on Sound Barrier again. He was like, yeah, we can do that. So was the birth of that version of Year of the Dragon. We banged out this EP real quick. I had written some song ideas. Tracy fleshed them out. Me and Walt came together on the lyrics. So we recorded our first EP and put it out, and it was like people actually dug it. And then Walt had even gotten it to Flea from the Chili Peppers, and he was like, "Yeah, you guys need to keep doing what you're doing." So then we're encouraged. We're like, "All right, well, until Stan is ready to go back to Sound Barrier, we'll do Year of the Dragon, and then when he comes back in, we'll flip back over to Sound Barrier." So in my mind, I'm like, we had booked a show. I'm like, let me try booking some shows. So I booked 2 shows in a row after kind of creating an online presence on MySpace. And one of them was at On the Rocks, which is, it's a little club above the Roxy. And the other, I had gotten hitting up like 2 days later after that show for another show opening for HR. It was HR, Weapon of Choice.
Shouts to
It
Lonnie.
was like, yeah, it was 3 other bands. Sater, I know what happened to the drummer. I'll answer that in 1 minute. But anyway, I'm thinking because we got 2 guys from Fishbone and Tracy is a legend from Soundberry. I'm like, this show's gonna be packed. I'm all excited. We get to the first show, and it was my wife, this guy named Lamar, who I got to shout him out because he has been almost to every Year of the Dragon show I've ever been in, and
Wow.
even some of the ones I haven't been in. He even came on tour with us at one point. So it was him. There was 3 other guys from the band before us, the bartender, and the doorman. So we played our butts off. It was me, Tracy, this guy named Stick 3X at the time playing bass, and a drummer named John Montgomery. So we played and we played our asses off, and it was great. But it was like one of them gigs where yeah, and after you finish your song,
Wow.
so that was crazy for me. But what was even crazier was 2 days after that was the HR show, and it was at this place called the Waters Club in Long Beach. No, in San Pedro, sorry. And so we go from that to this show where there's like 2,000 people. So I'm freaking out. Because I had come through a back way and I heard the crowd, but I didn't see them. And I loaded in, went backstage, peeked out of the curtain, and now I'm freaking out because I've never played before that many people in my life. So I go from 5 to 2,000, and my heart's bumping, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. But we played that one, and that show went really well. So then I'm thinking it's still going to be up, but no, it was more shows. We graduated from eventually 4 people to 10 people, 10 people to 20, and it just kept growing. And I think the the the, the line where we kind of jumped the shark into actually being a somewhat successful band was doing an opener at a hemp.com for Ziggy Marley.
Wow.
So we went to that, and that was another big crowd. But at that time, I was like, I am ready now. Like, I'm sick of these 10, 20, 30. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm trying to get to. So that was a great show. And Ziggy Marley, like, even came up to me afterwards. He's like, Brethren, you bring such energy. Yeah, such energy. Rasta love. And I'm like,
Awesome.
I don't know what the hell you just said, man, but thank you. I appreciate it. Um, so we went on from there, continued to play club shows. And then our next big show, there was another one that we did locally. But we were starting to get more of a name. And then all of a sudden in 2012, which funny enough was the Year of the Dragon, it was a Chinese Year of the Dragon. In August, I'm on vacation in Philadelphia, and at that was about a year and a half after we put out our first record, Blunt Force Karma, our first full length record. Um, there was a lot of interest. We also opened for King's X. That was the last big show before that. And that we killed that too. Like we destroyed that stage, and everyone that saw it said we were the best band that night besides King's X. So in August of 2012, I'm in Philly at a family reunion for my wife's family, and this guy named Gage calls me up, and he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "Yeah, I'm calling for Flea. I want you guys to open up for the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Staples Center.
Sick.
Can you do that?" And I'm sitting here like nigga, don't play. Come on. I'm like, who's playing on my phone? He's like, no, we want you to open up for the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Staples Center. And so it took a second or two, and I'm like, well, what nights? And he rattled off 2 nights, like for like a month in the future. And one night would have been, which I wish I'd have taken. One night was with Thundercat, with us, Thundercat, and then the Peppers. And the second night that they offered was with us, Off, and the Chili Peppers. So
Wow.
that was on a Sunday though. So I took the Saturday night, which I thought would have more people. And I went to the Sunday night one, and I wish I had opened that one instead. But anyway, I accepted that date, and I remember I'm sitting there frozen, and my wife is looking at me like, "What's wrong with you?" And she said I looked like the blood just drained out of my whole body, and I'm like, I'm gonna I'm gonna open up for the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Staples Center. And her family was there, and they're from different areas across the country, and they're like, well, what's a Staples Center? I'm like, that's the place the Lakers play. And they're like, oh shit. So everybody got it, and then I called up everybody in the band, and I was telling them, and we were all like freaking out together. And that show, I wish I could remember something from. I barely remember it, but thankfully there's a lot of pictures. But I look at them and I have complete disassociation. I can't remember anything from that show.
Wow.
But what I do remember was later on that year, we opened up for Bad Brains for
Oh,
2 shows.
wow. Sick.
So those shows, one was at the OC Observatory in Orange County, and the other one was at the Fonda Theater in Hollywood. And I had that weird thing again at the observatory where I don't remember shit. I don't remember nothing. And thankfully we got a lot of pictures from there too. Otherwise it would just be like a blank in my memory. But I remember everything from the Fonda show. I could tell you every single last detail. I could like meeting Travis Barker backstage. Like I didn't know so many celebrities like Bad Brains. Like Juliette Lewis was there with Brad Wilk,
Wow.
and she was fine than a motherfucker up close. Like super tall, like 5'10".
Sheesh.
Yeah,
Didn't she
that was
go?
shocking. I'm
Didn't she
like,
go to the prom with RuPaul? Because I think they're from the same. Isn't she from like the South? I swore I saw an old punk rock picture with her and RuPaul like at a prom or something like
oh,
that.
you might have, because she gets down like that. Like she is a total alternative kid, like person. So, but she was cool. Travis was cool. Um, all the guys in the Brains were cool, and that they didn't watch us open for them at the observatory like a couple of days before, because they played the observatory, which we opened. Then they went to San Diego, which we did not open, and then they came back to Hollywood at the Fonda, which we did open. They
Man.
didn't watch us at the observatory, but they watched us at the Fonda. And it was wild because to play that show and look at the side of the stage and just see them there like proud
Heck
parents,
yeah.
it was like still to me one of the highlights of my, well, two highlights from that show. The one thing I remember from the observatory was at one point HR came out during a song we played called Simple Man, and he just randomly, it's a groove so you could dance to it, and he randomly just comes out on stage, starts dancing to it, and then dances right off stage again. That's the only thing I remember about the observatory. But were so cool, and it was such a fun night, and it was just like every punk, old or young, was there. It was completely oversold, actually, and we played our butts off there, and that's when I knew, like, as a band, I was finally gonna have the experience to take it further and get to know people. And then as we went on in 2013, we opened for Living Color and Death, Metalachi, and then we started touring. Started going up and down the West Coast. Took our first East Coast run, and that was a great experience. Dirty Walt was one of the greatest people in my life to learn from. I've never learned as much about actual music from anybody than I have Spacey T. Spacey T is a person that I've had a lot of ups and downs with, but he is like, I love that guy like a family member. He is a musical genius to me. So between playing with him and playing with Walt, and then later on when Mark Ray, our Year of the Dragon's current guitarist, came in, um, he has kind of developed into his own power and presence too. So he plays with me in Hope Fiend also, and he's on that shit right now. Like, I think every musician reaches a point where they are like just tapped in to the source, and it's like just the music just starts flowing out of them. And Mark is at that point right now, but Spacey has been there forever, and he can just, if you take that guy into a studio, I don't care if he knows your material or not. If you put it in front of him and say, create something on that, he will create magic. That's who he is.
I call him the Guitar Slayer, man.
He
I always,
is.
I'm like, oh, what's up, Guitar Slayer? He's down, man.
He
Spacey's
is the
amazing.
man, like, period. And nobody, even with as many ups and downs as we've had in our personal relationship, nobody, him, Walt, nobody can say anything. I'll be ready to fight if you talk bad about either one of those guys to me. Like, I love those guys. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much the deal with Year of the Dragon. We went from nothing to something, and what I recommend for young bands is to try to stay away from what I call daytime managers. And those are people who want to manage you, but have to work a day job and don't take it as seriously as you take it. There are some daytime managers that want to make it as much as you do. And they're super rare. Like, uh, if you're talking about bigger bands, you would think of like the guy that helped you to become successful. I can't remember his name right now, but he pretty much was there with him from day one, and spent his own money to help him get stuff done, and uh, got to the tippy top with him before he fell off. And same with the managers of REM originally that started with them from nothing. If you can find that kind of person to help you, great. But if you got just some homeboy that's working a job, you got to constantly hound him about what's going on. Don't mess with that person, because I've been there, done that, and I found I did so much more on my own than anybody else to this day could ever have done for me.
Man, that's some good advice. Speaking of Hope Fiend, tell us about Hope Fiend. I like the stuff that I've read, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have. But I want you to describe what Hope Fiend. I love the name, and I love the concept of what I've read about Hope Fiend. So for the audience, and shouts to Cherish. I saw you, Davey Agogo, some of the homies out there. And another guy. Oh, he had that one question. I forgot that he was gonna see if he could
Oh,
answer.
Proper Ground. So, Setter, pretty much the guys. I know the drummer from Proper Ground, so he almost joined Year of the Dragon at one point. So he gave me the skinny on all that, and pretty much those guys are just kind of working regular jobs at this point. They've kind of faded into the background. And for people that don't know what we're talking about, Proper Ground is a black rock band that was signed to Madonna's label Maverick in the mid '90s.
Mm.
And you can find, if you want to see what they look like or what they sound like, you can go on YouTube. There's a clip of them playing on the Arsenio Hall show. But they were pretty much one of those tax write-off bands for Madonna. They were the first band that she signed when she formed Maverick Records, which was meant to, she obviously form Maverick to put out her own music, but she signed Proper Grounds first, and they were. I wasn't a big fan, but a lot of people did like them. But there was no real effort to promote them or get them out there, so they ended up being dropped, and they haven't really done anything since.
Man, that's messed up.
It is. It is. I know a few people that's happened to. 24/7 Spies has been a victim of that as well. So,
Shouts to Jimmy Hazel.
yeah,
Cool brother.
man, Jimmy, and my man Rick Scator and all those
Yes.
brothers, man. Those are
All
my
of them.
brothers too. A matter of fact, let me put them in the chat just in case they're awake. See what
Yeah,
they have.
I gotta, man, man, yeah, those guys are awesome.
All right, give me 1 second. Bam. Okay. So I'm sorry, your question was about Hope Fiend. So in regards to Hope Fiend, um, let's go back to the end of Year of the Dragon. In 2015, we had one of our most successful years. We had toured the East Coast for the first time, and we killed it everywhere we went. Um, we had played the Ink and Iron Festival, which was crazy because on that day that we played, it was us, the Adolescents, Dillinger Escape Plan, Hate Breed, and Kill Switch Engaged.
Sick.
So yeah, that was like, and I remember I sat in my car and cried that day. And I shouldn't, because at that point I was like used to, like, we had done some pretty big gigs, but I was like, this is further proof, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So we had done that year. We had recorded a whole record that still has nobody has ever heard. And this is gonna sound crazy, but at one point, God, I had been going to church a lot. I've been going to religious retreats. I was doing a lot of street work, feeding the homeless. And God spoke to me and told me that I could not be in that band anymore. And at first I ignored it because I'm like, maybe it's just me going crazy. And the voice was so strong till finally I was like, you know what? I can't ignore it anymore. So I told the guys, and I was like, I'm going to finish out 2015 with whatever gigs land in our lap. So the only gig we had was one that was a benefit for this guy who runs races. He's legally blind, but he has a partner that locks arms with him, and they run marathons together.
Wow.
So they were raising money for their next marathon at that time, and we played that one, and it was a great final show. And I remember going home and just being like, because I had personally invested in this album that we did that's never been released. I had spent up to like $4,000 on it,
Wow.
and I'm like literally in prayer, like, God, why would you have me do that? And I'm not gonna put this thing out. And I was thinking about putting it out anyway, but I felt in my spirit like I'm not supposed to do that. So I took a few years off, and it was kind of great because one thing about being in Year of the Dragon, one consistent hurdle that was always a problem was when Walt went back to Fishbone, like to book shows or tours. I'd have to deal with their management, what they were doing, and we got offered some great gigs that we had to turn down because Walt couldn't do it. And even a couple of them, we still played them, and I just did it without Walt. I just sang all his parts. Um, there was that same year, there was a festival we played with the Dead Kennedys and Naked Ray Gun, Street Dogs, and a bunch of other bands. Walt couldn't do it. So I'm like, I am not turning down no festivals, like none. So we played that one. And then we opened also for a band, the band Death from Detroit. Um, I
Love
was
that
like,
dude.
I don't know if these guys are gonna tour all the time, so I'm like, we're not turning down that one. I'll just
Yes.
sing these parts. But that those gigs are harder by far. So I didn't like doing them, and we agreed unless it was too good to turn down that I would do them. So often we would have to turn down shows or tour opportunities because Fishbone had stuff going on. So I actually found after I left the Dragon that it was a little relief. I could like just relax for a second and not have to deal with band stuff. And so I got used to it. But then in 2019, a friend of mine called me and he was like, "Do you have any connection to suicidal tendencies?" And I was like, "Yeah, I actually do. What for?" And he was like, "Well, a friend of mine is putting on this unique event that's called the Rock and Mixed Martial Arts Festival. So what's going to happen is that several bands are going to play during the day, and during the night, you'll take your ticket and go in to see these mixed martial arts fights." I was like, oh shit, that sounds dope. So then I'm thinking like I'm gonna help Year of the Dragon. So I'm like, well, if I can get Suicidal Tendencies, can you put on Year of the Dragon as a support band? Because at this point they had the guy that replaced me, Flying J. So he was like, yeah, I'll put him on. So then I'm excited. I call Walt. I'm like, Walt, man, I think I got this festival for you guys where you can open for Suicidal Tendencies. So he's like, oh man, shit. Let me know what's up, nigga. Shit, yeah. So uh long story short, we hooked it up. We got them in contact with Suicidal's people. And so I call Walt back and I'm like, yeah, bro, this shit looks like a go. And he's like, nah, man, Fishbone got some tour dates, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, bro, no. I'm like, well, can we maybe fly you in and fly you out back to, and he's like, nah, that ain't gonna work. So then I don't know what it was, but something in me was like, you know what? You play that show. I didn't have a band. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. I had exactly a month from the time that we started putting it together to get some guys to make it happen. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I negotiated a salary or a pay, what they were going to pay us. And then I called Tracy and I was like, Spacey, can you play this band? I told him for how much and it was pretty good. He was like, yes. And then I called my old bass player he was the first bass player really in Year of the Dragon. His name was Elliot. And me and him, it kind of ended on a bad note, but I called him back and I was like, Elliot, can you do this gig? And I told him how much it was, it was good money. And he was like, yes. And then there was a drummer I knew named Brian Collier, who was actually the first drummer. He had played with Santana. He had played with Lauryn Hill. Had played for Tony. And I called him up and I'm like, let's do this. So then I just picked some old Year of the Dragon songs that we barely played, wrote like 3 new ones, and I'm like, we're just gonna do a short set. We rehearsed them for that month, and at that time I called the band Ganesh because I thought it was cool, but I was like, well, if I continue on with this, Ganesh is not going to work because when you type it in a search engine,
Elephants.
elephants everywhere, and there's like apparently all over the world, like at least 100 bands named
Oh,
Ganesh.
wow.
So, because I tried Ganesh by itself, and of course you get all the elephant deity stuff, and then if you type Ganesh band, there's all these bands that pop up. So I
Christmas
was like,
Horse
I'm going to change the
dance.
name. So I was like in line with what I want to do because eventually I want to tie it all into activism and spirituality. And so I came up with the names Hope Fiend and Hope Dealer. And I went to my then 18-year-old son and I was like, look, bro, what grabs you more? Does Hope Fiend grab you more or does Hope Dealer grab you more? And he was like, Hope Fiend. So I'm like, that's what we rolling with. So after that show, oh man, we had another. That festival went so well, they set up another one, and at this one, it would have been us, Fishbone, TSOL, Ignite. Uh, uh, there's two other bands, but it would have been slamming. And the date it was set on was the literal date that the governor shut down California for COVID.
Man.
So that festival got canceled like on that day, and I was like, oh shit. So I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to play music, but it started working out after COVID lifted. I decided just to book a tour. Like nobody knew who we were. We didn't have a record out yet. We had no merch. And I'm like, I'm gonna book a tour just to see what happens. And I actually, after COVID lifted and you could do that again, people were so desperate for entertainment that they booked us sight unseen. Like we had a couple of demos, we'd send them, they'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll pay you this much. And we're like, yeah. So we actually made money on our first tour, like from the gig. And God, one thing that pains me to this day, if we had merchandise, that would have been, oh my God, we would have made so much money. I mean, we made money, but we wouldn't have made a lot of money. So I took it as like, this is something I'm supposed to do because a passion of mine is feeding and caring for the homeless and getting them help. And eventually I want to get to the point where at shows I can have people bring food uh, and supplies like blankets or toothbrushes and stuff like that, and I can go and hand them out myself later. Or I can even get people, hey, if you want to come with me after the show, I'm going downtown. Let's go. Let's live it. Let's walk it out. Let's be the change we want to see. Um, and another thing, I just as of thank you for the birthday shout out, by the way. But I'm an old head, and one thing that keeps me going in this is that I see bands like Zulu, uh, Soul Glow.
I just saw both of those bands live,
Oh
and shouts to Destiny from Zulu. That's the homie.
man, I love both of those bands.
They
Like
kill.
love them.
Love those. They're awesome.
Man, I saw them too, and they have been the first bands I've seen where I'm like, they are on some different shit, and their whole vibe and energy makes me feel like, okay, like I can get in there with these youngins, and we can compete, and we can encourage each other, and not have ageism, or not feel like I'm doing something outdated. And we are actually working on a record now where I just like, even watching the interview you did with the brother, oh my God, the last guy, what was his name?
Um, 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 Leo?
Come on, we can't both be like that. What?
I know. Was it Leo or was it or Joel?
Both of them, actually. Both
Yeah.
of those guys got me fired up. Like I went immediately after those interviews and started writing. And the record we're gonna deliver, I think, is going to be unlike anything that's out there now. And I don't, I'm sure every musician says that. But I just decided, like, at the age that I'm at and at the stage that I'm at, I have nothing to lose by going for it. So
Right.
I'm going full tilt. And so, on the activism side, I want to deal with the homeless issues. And the musical activism side, I want to deal with, uh, I can't even say it yet because I don't want to. There's a phrase I have for it. I'm going to keep that under wraps because I think it's pretty crazy, and it's probably going to be the album title. But I want to deal with the culture right now that has destroyed, I think, positive Black culture in a way.
Mm.
The culture of music that, if you go back to when you were younger, like in the 90s, you could turn on the radio and you could hear multiple black voices. You could hear NWA, you could hear Biggie, but you could also hear Arrested Development.
Chef
You could also
D.
hear Public Enemy. You could also hear BDP.
Yep.
You could hear a variety of voices, and you had options within the genre to pick from. Now they have phased out any positive
Yeah,
voices,
they
like
have.
any voices of reason, any voices of sense, and they've replaced them with voices that say, except for a few, not all of them, but for the most part, 90% of them, these voices have nothing to offer the youth. They don't have any positive reinforcement. They don't have any art to it even. I don't hear the art. Um, I don't hear the sense of, I want to help you or connect with you, or I want to teach you something, or I want you to grow. Like I just hear consumerism. I hear debasement. I hear genocide. I hear a bunch of negative stuff that it seems like people who are young don't want to call it out for whatever reason, and I'm not young, so I don't know why. And then I hear people in my age group that just want to pretend like it doesn't exist to them and that it's not important to them. And so I want to spend the rest of my musical life combating that, because it's not only prevalent in music, it's prevalent in shows on BET, it's prevalent in shows on MTV, it's prevalent in shows on Bravo, like The Real Housewives of Atlanta. There's this empty, negative energy culture um, that, that is not really for black consumption. Black people watch it, but you have to look at these record companies and who owns them. Like, black people do not own Universal.
Nope.
Black people don't own Warner Music Media. They don't own these companies. They don't regulate them. They get pennies for little sub labels like Bad Boy or Cash Money or whatever the label du jour is of today to go to that. So black people are getting pennies. You know what I'm saying? Uh, and they're getting rich by comparative standards, but compared to the CEO of Universal or one of these other big media companies, you're getting pennies. So they're
Yes.
selling their souls for pennies, for comfortable pennies. And I don't really think they have the foresight or care to even see how what they're doing is affecting generations. All they know is that they're rich right now. They got money right now. They don't have to worry about common man problems right now, and it's so short-sighted. And I think it is really doing a disservice to black people. It's not allowing the kids out there who are creative, who do have something to say, to get their voice out. Because I see them all over the place on Instagram and YouTube. They're like so many uh, innovative rappers, innovative R&B singers that have a lot to say. And unfortunately, here, this platform is the only place they can say it. This is the only place they can build an audience. And that's good in one way, because you can't co-opt anything they're doing if they're not signed or not, having to deal with major labels. But on the other hand, it's like, radio play still is the metric in which an artist's life can change. So if you're not hearing this on the radio, if you don't have that voice to reach the people on the radio, and this is the only means you have, it means you have to work twice as hard, so it's draining.
Yeah.
It means you still have to fight, for your place on these shows, where these established people that are doing the exact opposite of you don't really want you and don't want your message, or don't want your message to get out, because they don't see what we used to see in the 90s, that there's room for everybody. They're afraid that you're going to destroy their negative message. So they don't even want you to get a positive one out. They just want the same thing that they're doing. It's going to help
It's
them.
almost it's almost like you have to do like what a lot of those. I look at punk and hip hop as cousins because of they were very grassroots movements when they both came on, especially when it comes to hardcore, and just a lot of those bands back in the day, they were on some, like you said, you could hear NWA, but even with NWA and even Ice Cube, you could hear some element of conscious type stuff. They're letting you know the situation and also almost warning you about that situation. I mean, when I was listening to stuff like that, I was also listening to Dead Kennedys and groups like Minor Threat and Bad Brains, of course, too. But it's just like those bands and those artists have created something from the grassroots, and now it's almost like they've the mainstream cats have had something, they're trying to drown it out, but you could never drown out the grassroots.
Mm.
But like you're saying, man, my thing is like I wonder how we could overthrow, not necessarily like overthrow them, but just to get our voice into that mainstream, or I don't know if that makes sense, but like, yeah, their money is financing their whole nihilistic type philosophy when it comes to a lot of today's stuff that's being promoted. It's like they don't want the avenue that we had of the conscious stuff, that we came up listening to. I mean, I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense, and the thing is, they don't want it there. That's it. Could be there if they wanted it there. They
Yeah.
don't want it there, and that's even if you look at punk. Like when I talk about my dislike, excuse me, of a lot of young punk bands, um, that dislike doesn't stem because I'm just some old guy that's like, oh, old school punk. If it's before 2000, that's no, man. I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm coming from the perspective of, first of all, it was all indie, so you could go to shows, you could talk to bands, you could hang out with bands. It really was like we are all in this together. It wasn't like Green Day playing, the sports arena or the Forum or whatever, and you have no access or opportunity to connect with that band on a personal level. It's just they're rock stars.
Yeah.
So I can't even look. I don't see Green Day as a punk band. I see them as an arena rock band. And the
Mm.
same with Blink 182. I'll never forget when they came out, there was a Tiger Beat magazine with them on the cover, and it said, "Who's the cutest member of Blink
That's
182?"
so funny.
And I'm like, "Oh, this is done.
Tiger
This is
Beat.
cooked. It's over." So that brand of punk, I'm not hating on simply because it's huge, but I kind of am in a way because there's no struggle with the police. There's no struggle with how they look in the world, like dumping all over them because of it. There's none of the against. Like they are in the system. They are the system. They are all arena rock bands. They all they stand for is making money and being rock stars. And that is
Yeah.
totally against what the OG punk movement was about. We were trying to break that down and break down the barriers and kind of recreate the whole notion of what it means to be a musician playing with passion and also connecting with your fans. Like none of that is present with those kind of bands. And that's why I don't like them. And I hate when I talk to younger people and they just kind of chalk it up to, oh, we hate these guys because they're millionaire rock stars and blah blah blah. No, that's not why. And it's that same message. Like all music of rebellion has been quieted and silenced. So I decided with this next record that we're going to do that I'm going to come out like swinging, and I mean in a way that I guarantee you. I feel like my whole moment and life has built up to this point to where like I have nothing to lose. I am in the twilight of my life. So if I'm gonna do music, I have no interest in just touring and putting out music and trying to be anything other than somebody that says something and does something and is about something. So all I can say about this next record or I should say our first record. We only have an EP that's out now on all streaming platforms, by the way. Um, but all I can say about this next album or first album we're going to put out is that we are going to come out and punch people in the face, and it's going to make a lot of the themes and song titles are going to make people very angry and very in their feelings, and I can't wait to do that. I'm looking forward to seeing the reaction.
Like bands like the Dead Kennedys did that too. Like,
They did.
I mean, and I mean, shoot, they were one of those bands. It's just like for me, I mean, a lot of, and yeah, they were bands. Those bands woke people up. It's like the same thing with Gil
Yeah.
Scott Heron or someone like that. Like, and I mean, like Sly Stone and even Bob Dylan. I mean, like those people actually had something to say. Like I remember I was clowning it, not to bring up the harp on Bob Dylan, because I heard Bob Dylan on We Are the World, and my dad hit me. He's all, you got to check out like his old stuff, dude. Like he kind of schooled me on Bob
Right.
Dylan and what he was about. You know,
Early
man,
Bob Dylan is a shit. That mother. I'm really trying to watch my language.
it's
That
cool.
dude
I'm
cannot
not tripping.
sing.
I'm not
But
tripping on
as a songwriter, he is the business.
that,
And it's
man.
always funny. Like I like his first two records because it feels like he was still trying to sing. But after that, I like the covers. Like my love of Dylan really cemented itself through people like All Along the Watchtower is like the greatest cover to me ever made of somebody else's song. Um,
Man,
from where it started to where Hendrix took it is just like, you know, very few
Hendrix, man.
covers accomplish that. But
Hendrix just,
yeah,
man,
he's a
like
business.
how on earth that dude, man. Yeah, I don't know. Like what listening to the original and how Hendrix did that, it's like, all right, we not only see the letter of the word, but we see the spirit of the word.
Man, come on. Come on, you better preach. You better preach right now. Come on.
Man,
I'm
speaking
telling
of
you,
that,
bro. Trying
who
to tell you,
who
man, that is like the gold standard of covers. That's what you're supposed to do. You keep the spirit and the vibe of the original, and then you just take it to like a different level. You take it to a whole
man,
different stratosphere. So if you're not covering a song like that, don't bother. Like, and a lot of people don't. I hate when I hear covers that are just basically like almost a remix of the original song. If you're gonna cover it, like, come on, man, do better, do better.
yeah, man. I can't even speak on what he did because it's just like otherworldly the way he did that tune. Like Hendrix is the reason I got into playing too. So that's another.
Yeah, man, it's wild, but yes. So I kind of veered off again, but that's
No,
essentially what
no,
Hope Feed is about. We
that's
are
cool,
literally here to bring hope, to unite people, to minister from the stage, which I've been fortunate and crazy blessed enough to do a couple of times without fear. Um, I remember we played when we opened for the Dickies in September, I think it was. I could feel it, like God was speaking to me, and He was like, "There is somebody in this crowd that's really damaged right now." And so we have this one song where there's a little instrumental beginning, and I can talk through it before we kick it off. And I was just like, I feel you out there. I know you're hurting. If you want to come talk to me afterward, come find me so I can give you a hug. And sure enough, afterward, this guy came up, and it almost shocked me because he was like, "Hey," he tapped me, and I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm here for my hug," and I'm like, and he told me his story was that he was getting divorced, and his wife had custody of all their kids and was trying to get like full custody. So I had a pastor friend that was there who was a punk rocker, but he's also a pastor. And I was like, we we got to minister to this kid right now. We got to pray for him. So we did. We made a circle. We prayed for him. You know, I friended him here on Instagram, and I occasionally still check in because I'm always curious, like, you know, is he doing well? Is, you know, what happened between him and his wife? I'm always curious about that. But I believe that's part of the purpose of what I'm doing is to be able to do that as well. So I just look forward to doing it more.
That's dope. Oh, by the way, that last person that I had on was Tex Mosley. Shouts to that brother. Really good
Tex,
dude. Beautiful, beautiful person, man.
my man is a true innovator, man. Nothing but respect for Tex. He's another guy I want to meet and shake his hand because seeing him on stage with all of these bands has been like, you know, sometimes it's I love black bands because I feel like we have something that's unique uh, to offer in a different way than just straight ahead like white or mixed bands. But sometimes when you see that one black dude, you know he has been through some stuff to be in these bands, and he has a specific set of things he's gone through. Um, whereas it's indigenous to him being black and being the only black person in that band. I know he has some individual stories like that, and I love hearing from guys like that. I respect them. Um, you know, he's an OG, of course, so you know, much mad respect. But I love guys like Tex that I've met. You know, I love hearing the stories from Jimmy Hazel. I love hearing the stories from Dr. No. Um, at one point, a good friend of mine before he had joined Nirvana was friends with Pat Smear.
Mm,
So, you know, I had gotten to know him. I didn't even know he was biracial. Um, so he was super duper mellow and cool. And, you know, I had 1,000 questions about the germs and he answered all of them.
so cool.
He was very cool. In one of his last days, do you remember the John Anson Ford Theater?
Man, I've never been there.
So in the, I would say from 94 to probably 99, they used to have, no, earlier than that even, probably from 89 to 99, they had a lot of shows there. And at one point when Jane's Addiction was like blowing up after it was right between their first and second album, they played John Anson Ford for like 7 straight nights. And uh, I gotten tickets for every night except for one that had sold out. And Pat Smear worked the door there. That was his last day job before Nirvana.
Wow.
And uh, me and my friend got to the door, and we were like, "Yo, can you hook a brother up?" And he let us in. And I had done acid that night, and I was flying, and it was literally one of the greatest shows I had ever seen. Probably because of that. And when I got back out, I thanked him profusely and I hugged him and I was crying and he was just laughing his ass off like, yo, chill, man. It's cool, it's chill, bro. But Pat Smear is one of the coolest dudes like ever.
Wow.
Ever. That brother is he's if you can ever get him to be on this show, I know that guy's got story after story since the Germs days. He's got a lot to say about being in Nirvana and in the Foo Fighters as well. So
45 grade. I've
yeah.
the only person that I've ever met from that band is Don Bowles. I always see him around
Oh,
town, and we always
Don
talk
is
about progressive rock.
Don's hilarious.
We always talk about prog rock, man, like King Crimson and stuff.
Yeah. I
Man,
love Don.
yeah, Don's a cool
Oh
cat.
man. Yeah, Don is cool as fuck. Don is that guy.
Man, but man, if you, man, I would have him on here if he's down. You know, I'm totally down to have Pat on here.
You know what?
That's a trip.
I think I might like he doesn't know or associate with the mutual friend we have anymore. He's like moved on to upper echelon. rock stars now, but I may still have a friend of a friend that can reach out to him. So I'll see what I can do on your behalf.
Man, and speaking of that, like, who are your influences as far as musically, and just like who are the ones that like got you? And I also read that you play guitar too. Is
I
that
do
true?
play guitar, but I don't. Uh, since the crack use, um, it did something funny to my brain in relation to how I strum chords and my timing, and I've never been able to get it back. So
I'm sorry.
since I got clean, oh, it's all good, man. Everything for a reason and purpose. Since I got clean, I have not played guitar, so I use it to write with, but nothing else. In regards to influences, for me, um, Diamond Dave is one of my top rock performer influences from Van Halen,
Really?
David Lee Roth.
You,
Uh,
man,
I was shocked when I first saw them, like at all the shit he was like, I would almost call him like the white Michael or Prince. He was
wow.
all over
He's a
that
gymnast too,
stage. He
right?
was doing high kicks. Most people don't know he's like a high level martial artist. So he was doing sword forms and
Wow.
staff forms, like all this complicated martial arts stuff. You know, he would jump in the air and do a flying split that was like 10 feet off the ground. I'm like, this motherfucker is crazy.
I heard he
So
was in the gymnastics and stuff, but I didn't know
yes,
he was a martial artist.
yeah, he's a crazy martial artist. I think he's he's in his 60s now, late 60s, so he's not like, as pliant and can't do all that stuff anymore. But back in the day, he was amazing. So he's a big influence. James Brown, um, to me, because he just gave everything. Like he would get on a stage, and when he would get off, and I've actually seen him even in his later years, like he still gave everything to the stage and left nothing, like nothing, no holding back. Um, Rollins and HR and Angelo and Keith Morris, those
Shouts to Keith.
four, those four are the ones that made me want to do this as far as like getting on the mic. When I saw them in that week and a half stretch,
Man.
and they still remain like my top influences. And then there's a couple of people you will never have heard of. For no doubt, they had it was originally a two-singer lineup. There was a black dude named John.
I'm gonna write about him. I know who he is.
Yeah,
Rest in peace to him.
John
Yeah.
was the
Man.
shit. John was like John. I would love to have seen a show with John and Angelo
Wow.
to see who could outwild the other, because they were both like next level. But John had the flip thing going. He could do like the front and back flips, which Angelo wasn't doing, but Angelo did every fucking thing else. So I would love to know, like, between them, who would have put on the better show if they would have played together. But as most may know or not know, before No Doubt really blew up, John, the second singer, committed suicide.
Rest
Uh,
in peace.
yeah, but he was amazing. He's a big influence on me. There's a guy named Deshaun Franklin who sang for a group called Freeja in the 90s. They were
What
one of,
happened? Yo, didn't they turn into Backlash or one of the
yes,
guys? Dude, one of those guys. I forgot. I was looking for those guys, and one of them actually hit up. But then I lost. Like I don't know where he is. Yeah, they
you know
all
what,
from my high school.
bro? He
I went to
will
Wilson
be so
High.
happy to hear that. There's
That's
in early in
crazy,
this chat, if you go back to the chat, there's their guitar player. I actually put him in. He is under the moniker the original rock star.
man.
But yes, their singer. So they, God, so much I could tell you quick. I'm gonna tell you this story quick because I love these guys. We actually did a EP with their guitar player called Five Fingers of Death, and
Sick.
he played on that EP because it was at a time where Spacey had left, and then we didn't have a guitar player, and then we ended up getting Mark, who plays with him now. But in between that time, we had the guitarist of Frisia slash Backlash do this EP. It was him, Norwood Fisher on bass, and then our drummer Kareem. So it was an amazing EP. I've lost track. I think it's online, but it's worth checking out. But anyway, with Frisia, you know their whole story, right? Or do you?
You know, I don't know. They used to play my high school dances, but I would never. I think I went to go see them once, and they ended up canceling. And I would always miss them, and I'm like, I gotta see this band because everyone would tell me because I'm this black punk rocker like you gotta check out Frisia. And for years, I've been trying to check those guys out. I mean, this is like back in the '90s, and
Right,
I'm like,
right.
man. So I never even got a chance to see them, but I always like their name, and then I remember when they changed their name to Backlash. Like I was like, man.
Well, here's a quick story. So Frisia was this guy on here again. His name here is the original rock star, but he calls himself the Dubber. So it was the Dubber, this guy named Pepe on bass, Deshaun Franklin on drums, and or on vocals, and I forget the drummer's name. So Pepe and the Dubber came to LA. They found these other two guys. They formed a band. They played Bogarts, which was a club in Long Beach. One
I played my
show,
first show there.
yeah.
Yep, I know. I remember that. I'm from Long Beach.
Okay. So they played at Bogarts, and the club owner liked them so much, he was like, you know what? I'm going to put you guys as a support slot on this next show that I have in 2 weeks. And they were like, what's the show? And they were like, it's Primus and 24/7 Spies.
Wow.
So that was their second show. And at that show, the guitarist Dimebag Darrell and Rex Brown from Pantera were at that show.
Whoa.
So all those bands left that show and they went to party with them because they had just finished Vulgar Display of Power and they were like about to blow the F up. So after that, they just start getting all these great gigs and their audience grew and they were friends. They were taking record company label meetings, but they wanted them to sign over their souls, and so they wouldn't do it. And they became friends with the CEO of Priority Records that had Ice Cube and NWA and all that.
Pat Shirley May.
And
Was that her
no,
name?
Brian. Oh, I forget his last name. His name's Brian something. If you watch the movie with Straight Outta Compton, he's the guy that signed them to his label. His
Oh,
name is Brian something. I can't remember his name. But anyway, they go out to dinner one night on a Friday, and he's like, "Why haven't you guys considered signing to me?" And so they're like, "Well, you're a rap label, so we didn't think you wanted rock." So he takes a slip of paper, writes down a number on it, slides it over to him, and he's like, "We're gonna get this deal done Monday." And they saw the paper, and they were like, "Yes." They party Saturday. They're celebrating the whole weekend. Party Sunday. All happy, drunk as shit. And then they go to an IHOP. And at the IHOP, they sober up. They eat food. And so they're in Long Beach where Pepe and the Dubber live. And the singer was like, lives in Laguna Niguel. So they're like, you can spend the night with us. And he's like, no, I'll just drive home. I'm sober now. Like, we've been sitting here for almost an hour and a half. I'm good. The guy drives home and on the freeway off ramp, falls asleep, car crashes, he dies. So that was what facilitated the change from Backlash to Frisia because after that, they were like, there's no Frisia without him. So we're gonna change the name and get another singer, but it wasn't the magic was gone.
my gosh.
Um,
I did not know that.
yeah,
Man, that's wow.
and it's still, it still resonates with them because you think in a weekend, like their whole life from that Friday to that Monday was about to change in the
Wow.
craziest direction and instead went the entire opposite way in like 3 days. Um, so that's the Frigid Backlash story. But their singer was a huge influence on me, as well as another guy you will probably never hear of named Cozy. And Cozy sang for a band that was about to blow up in the 90s called Spade Ghetto Destruction.
Huh.
And Spade had actually, with Cozy in the lineup, they had started getting record offers early. He was like amazing. And what had happened was he was actually more of a traditional rapper, but they had drafted him in to sing for this black rock band because they were like, rock is blowing up in the rock rap thing. We're telling you, you're going to be better off with us. So he got with them. He left to go sing or rap for like a traditional rap act. And they still ended up getting signed on the same label that signed Tool. However, that label shortly afterward went bankrupt, and Tool was absorbed by another label, and Spade Ghetto just got kicked off.
Man, wow.
Yes. So, but their Spade Ghetto's first singer Cozy was like amazing, and I think if he would have stayed with them, because the guy they replaced him with was not even nearly as good. He was okay, but Cozy was like this big, yoked up, like gangster looking, like he had the it thing. Like he had the look, he had the stage presence, he had it all. And I think if he would have stayed with them, they probably would have been signed to the label that Tool ended up on and would have blown up. But unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Man, what a trip.
Yeah.
That's a trip, man. I was gonna ask, is one of the guys from Backlash named Tehran Grimm by any chance? Or Terry and
Say
Grimm?
the name again?
I think it was Terry and Grimm. I think that was the brother that hit me up because I was looking for him, and somehow someone put me in contact with one of those guys, and then I don't know how I lost contact. I mean, I
Yeah,
need to check it.
man. If that's one of the guys, he may have been the drummer, but I can tell you for sure the guitar player is the dubber. Um,
Wow.
the bass player's name is Pepe, and the singer they had is a guy named Wolf, who went on in that's all. Nah, I don't even want to talk about that. But
I'm sorry,
Wolf went
man.
on to star in a bunch of movies. He was in Fast and Furious. He had a pretty big role on Sons of Anarchy at one point, and his lane now is just kind of acting.
Mm.
So they went through a couple of drummers. So you may have talked to the name you mentioned may have been one of the drummers, but
Wow.
those guys are the core.
Man, another thing I was going to ask you about. There's a band that you were in with Earl Liberty and Greg Hudson and
Oh
Lucky, the Circle Jerk guys, called
yeah,
hashtag Goals for that comp with TSOL, the squishy,
yeah,
what was it? The squishy anthem comp with TSOL, JFA, and Fishbone. Not to jump to another subject, but I thought I would ask that before I forgot because I tend to
yeah.
forget sometimes.
You know what? See, I be forgetting that too, man. So goals, hashtag goals was something that started off originally. It was purposely meant to be a studio project because Greg Hudson from the Circle Jerks has a studio, and he went to promote his studio. So he was like, "I got to get some more bands recorded to get my name out there." So I'm like, "Well, look, why don't we just do a project and that can be one of the first things you work on to help promote your own studio." So he was like, cool. And he's like, well, who are we going to get? And I'm like, well, what if I get Earl? And what if I get
That's the
Lucky?
word.
And
Man.
then he was like, yeah, but I've talked to those guys about playing music and they're not really like, that's not where they're at. Because Lucky is rich. Most people don't know this. Lucky Lair is like rich.
Hey, Jimmy is
Um,
right there, bro. What's up, Jimmy?
where's he at?
There he is, the homie.
Jimmy
Jimmy
Hazel?
Hazel's in the house. That's
Hey,
him.
yeah, man, that's my bro.
What's up, man? 24/7 spies. Jimmy Hazel is in the house.
Much love to Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy is he's a guy I can always call for anything. Like he is full of good advice. That's another him. If you put him and Tracy, who are very good friends, in the same room and you have them talk about music, man, those guys will give you an education at any time for any genre, like literally any genre, jazz, rock, funk. They will tell you things that the common man does not know, like can't even dream of. You could be in a room with them talking about music for a month. But
So
anyway,
cool.
I'm sorry, I went rabbit squirrel.
Yeah, I
Boom.
didn't mean to
Long story
interrupt, but I
short,
just thought you would want to know that the
yeah,
brother
yeah,
was
I
in the
definitely want
house.
to shout out Jimmy because I love Jimmy. But for goals, I just basically Greg gave me the challenge to get those guys involved, and they volunteered. We banged it out, and what I regret is that after it came out, people kind of liked it, and I really wanted to tour and do some stuff, but Greg had been like adamant from the beginning, like, hey, look, I'm treating this as a studio thing. So this is what it is. So they did okay. Actually, did pretty good. But the key thing for me is that I feel like if you chart the timing from when it came out to when the Circle Jerks got back together, coincidence?
Mm.
Who knows? But I don't think it is. I think it actually kind of helped those guys mend some fences and get back together. And they're actually about to go into the studio and record some more stuff soon.
Wow, man, yeah, those that's the soundtrack to my youth,
Yep.
especially that first album. And Earl Liberty himself, I mean, Circle Jerks, Sacrum Trust, that guy's a sick bass
Oh
player.
man,
Earl's
he
awesome.
is sick, and he was a guy I really love. Earl. Earl, even more so than Greg, was like the guy that showed up like to each session, and he was like ready to go, bro. Like he was prepared. His bass lines were sick on everything. He was like
Sick.
serious about playing and about getting shit done. So I always appreciate Earl. Earl's my
Man,
guy.
so dope, man.
Yeah.
Man.
So I mean, one thing about these interviews is you make me realize like how fortunate I've been close to a lot of situations. And I've met a lot of people and been blessed enough to play with a lot of people. When I think of like from the Faith No More thing to Walter to even the guys in Hope Fiend now to goals, it's like it's been a great journey. And like I said, I look forward to what we're gonna do next year because we are really going to shake some shit up on a different level.
I can't wait to hear it, man. I mean, shoot. Funny thing is, I don't know if I told you this, the first time I saw Year of the Dragon was at a loft upstairs downtown. And you guys,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
with
you remember that
Blacksmith, I
show?
think. I
Huh?
think the band Blacksmith played up there
Yep.
too. Uh,
And the
Shoot.
band from Las Vegas, I forget the chick's name. She was like a
Yeah,
punk rock Tina Turner.
yeah. Oh God, what was her name?
I always forget her name, but she's an actress as well. I haven't talked to her in years.
Yeah. I remember that
Melanie,
band.
that's her name.
Yep.
Melanie, something like that.
Yeah. Yes, y'all.
You guys
That
tore
was a crazy
it
show.
up.
That was a
Y'all tore it. I mean, dude. And then it's funny. I went back a few years later. One of my friends ended up moving in that spot, and I'm like, dude, you know, I went to a show here.
oh, that's nuts.
That
Let me
show
tell
was
you
lit.
something
I think my
funny
friend.
about that show, bro, because I hated that show.
Oh, oh no.
And the reason I hated that show was because at the night we played it, um, Tracy had actually decided that he was moving on. So that was his last show with us
Wow.
at that time. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was that he was turned up so loud that I had tinnitus for almost 3 weeks.
Yikes.
And then another thing was we were supposed to play earlier that night, but one of the guys from Blacksmith was like, my daughter's something's going on with his kid. I gotta leave right out of here after we play. Can you let us play earlier? And I let them play earlier, and later on, I saw him drinking at the little bar area they had set up, and I'm like, "What happened to your kid?" And he's like, "What? Oh, yeah, yeah, everything's
Lying.
cool, man. I didn't have to leave." So I was
Man.
just like, I went home so mad that night that I almost like was like, "This is not worth it." Like, cause I'm thinking like after that night, I got to find a guitar player. So I was like, I'm just tired of all this shit. But it all
You
worked out.
you guys tore it up though, dude. Like man, that show was lit. Like seriously. I think my friend Peter
Thanks,
Woods,
bro.
I think the homie Peter Woods had something to do with that Quality Collective guys. I mean, I did shows with them too. He's still like, man,
I
he's
love
still the homie though. Like
Peter.
that's crazy.
That was not a Peter show. That was another guy, and I can't remember his name. But he lives in Palm Springs now.
Oh wow.
Eric was his name. Yeah, Eric. I can't remember his last name, but he worked very hard to make that happen. I actually appreciate him like doing that, because that's the kind of thing that needs to be done more, and I think it is. Like a lot of the younger kids are doing it now, without as much fanfare. They're like, "Fuck it, we're just gonna play. We're gonna find
Man.
spots. We're gonna set up. We don't care if it's a lot. We don't care if it's a parking lot. We don't care where we're gonna set this PA up, and just play." And I thought that was dope of him to do that. Eric Quander, that was his name.
Yeah, where is he at? Dude, where is I know Eric.
Eric
That's
is in
crazy. Is
Palm
he in DC?
Springs. He's
Oh
in local
wow.
politics out there. Like he was, I think he ran for mayor of Palm Springs at one point, but
I
um
haven't talked to him in a while. It's been like since probably 2020 actually. Yeah, I forgot about
yeah,
Brother Eric Ponder, man. That's right. I
yeah,
forgot he did put that show on.
he did.
Peter was there. That's crazy,
Peter
man.
was there. We played a
Dang.
couple of shows for Peter too. I love Peter. He's a conscious brother with an open heart.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah, I love fucking with Peter. He's a cool guy.
Peter
Cool
got
guy.
me. It's funny because before, like as a solo art, well, I was with bands and stuff, and like when I left the band that I was in and just started performing on my own, Peter, it was him and the Quality Collective that kind of embraced me as an
Yeah.
artist. I mean, I'm from the south side of LA or LA County, Long Beach area, but I'm playing downtown. I remember the first show I did was a bit too experimental for some people, and I got kicked off. And Peter was like, F that dude, man. We're gonna have you when we get in the Grand Star. And he booked me and my band Create. He booked my own band when I had that. I mean, when Peter, man, Peter, all those guys like in Quality Collective, they're all like I always call them like my second family in LA,
Yeah.
and just what they did was awesome,
Peter's
man.
a
Um,
business.
oh yeah,
He is
man,
a
him,
business. I
Dobby,
still follow
Ambrose,
him hard on Instagram, and see him and his queen still out there doing stuff.
yeah, man, good dude, good
Yeah.
dude. I'm trying to get him to. I want to interview him too. He's all, man, let me know, and I'm like, dude, let me know.
Yeah. Let me know too, because I'll be watching that one.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, that brother, man. Talk about a small world,
Yeah, for
man. Like I
real
think
though.
this one cat had mentioned something earlier. He says, "How does a black man with a star tattoo on his eye fade into the background?" Thanks for the info. I guess he's talking about that other band. And then he mentioned this other cat mentioned I was at the last show when Rod left the stage with Year of the Dragon for the last show. Man,
Oh
that's a trip.
wow. Yeah, that was that was a heavy duty night. Heavy duty emotional night.
We got
But
Chaka Malik here too, man. Mr. Ghost
oh,
Decibels,
oh my
Chaka
god,
from
how am I not
Orange
seeing? I
Man.
don't see the same people you see.
Yeah, Ghost Decibels is him. That's Chaka from Burn and
Yeah,
Orange
man.
9mm.
What up,
What's up,
Chaka?
dude?
You
Want to
are
get
that
him
brother,
on
man.
here,
You are that guy.
man.
Oh,
So
oh my
cool,
goodness.
man.
Yeah,
What a
bro.
trip.
But this is I think it's super important. Again, I wanna reiterate like what you're doing is really super important because the more we have of people that have gone through this. And if Jimmy Hazel is still on, I implore you to let this brother interview you. And he is a great interviewer. You can watch any of his interviews on YouTube. I'm hoping he'll put the link in his bio to his channel, so people can go over there. Hint, hint. Um, but
I gotta do that.
yeah, bro, you link that in your bio for sure. But these interviews are like super, super important, and the more documents you get, like the better. I really appreciate that you're even taking the time out to talk to all of us and share your perspectives and allow us to share ours as well.
I'm more than honored that you guys are taking time to talk to me, man. You know, like I really appreciate it. Like seriously, I'm like just, you know, I don't even know if I could use the word elated. I'm just like I'm like overly like beaming right now. You know, like,
I'm beaming like Bill. Well, I can't even say it. I'm beaming like Willie Beeman from what's that movie? Damn, I can't even remember the movie. But you get the picture. Like I'm happy as well. I've been happy to watch the interviews and hear all the guys' stories, and I just look forward to more because there's a lot of voices, old, young, in between that you want to hear what they went through. It's funny because I hear a lot of your interviews with people, and I'm sitting here and they'll tell a story, particularly about being, a black man or woman in the scene. I'm like,
yep.
yeah, mm-hmm. So these are great, man. These are great, and I think you may have started something you don't even realize like how it's gonna grow yet.
Man, glory to the Most
Hey,
High and glory to all
hey,
you guys. And I see you over here, Jimmy. Thanks a lot, man. Really, really though. Like seriously. I mean,
Jimmy, let this
I'm
man interview you, bro.
be honored, man. That'd be rad. That'd be freaking cool.
Jimmy is soup, man. Let me tell you, I can't see it on my side. I see the friends on my side that have joined, but I can't see the ones on your side that have. But Jimmy, again, like most people don't realize Jimmy Hazel is like one of the most accessible. I almost called him a rock star, but I know he wouldn't even want to be called that. He's one of the most accessible musicians that you wouldn't think are accessible, and people don't approach him or talk to him in that way. You could probably literally hit him up and be like, Jimmy, I want to interview you. And he'll probably just say, yeah, like he is super duper cool about that stuff. And, I've been fortunate enough to have his number for years, and we've had so many long conversations about many things. Met a couple of times in person in New York. We played together the famous gig that a lot of people still talk about out here, which is I still believe to this day the last Spies gig in Los Angeles that we did with them in Year of the Dragon in I want to say 2009 or 2010. But boy, we ate up the stage of the Viper Room together, and it's
Man,
still one of my fondest memories as a musician. It was so much fun.
man, dude, I would have loved to check that out, man.
Yeah,
Shoot.
it's a wild show, wild show. Remember some some sheriffs. There were so many people like hanging inside and outside, and the sheriffs came up and they were like, "What's going on here?" And so somebody pointed to the marquee, and it turns out they were Spies fans. So the sheriffs parked their car illegally and came in and watched the show like for as long as they could until they left.
That's
That was
rad.
like so funny. And at first everybody's like, "Oh shit, like what's going on?" But it was like they were just having a good time.
That's so cool, man.
And
Man.
you're from LA. You know how these sheriffs are, man. They
Yeah.
ain't cool like that.
No, yeah, I definitely know.
Man.
Man.
So that was a wild night from start to finish. There's even a couple of not safe for work stories, but those are for another day in another environment.
Well, shoot, man. Like, man, I want to ask, man, what was it like working with Adam Fuller?
So Adam Fuller is like, to me, one of the best producers. And for people that don't know, he kind of splits his time. So his actual day gig is being the guitar tech for Zach Wild of Ozzy slash Black Label Society slash Pantera. But he also produced Black Label Society's last record. And he did our EP, and he is, to me, to this moment, the best producer that I have ever worked with in any band.
Wow.
Um, he got the best musical uh, performances out of us, and he was very encouraging. He could be a dick sometimes when you're in the booth, but in such a way that actually like makes you be better. So he's just, I would sing a note sometimes. He'd be like, "Bro, that just sounds like shit. It's like it's unlistenable."
Wow.
It's like, "No, you can do better." And I'm like, "Man, I'm like cursing him out." But then I would try something else, and he would be right. And I'm like, I don't ever want to admit you're right, but you were right. And he's like, "I know I'm right. That's why they pay me to do this. This
Comedy,
is my
man.
thing, bro. Like, don't worry about it." He's like, "I got you." He's like, I'm an asshole, but I got you. If you sound good, I sound good. So he's like, if nothing else, just remember that you sound good, I sound good. I'm like, okay. So he was cool. And we're trying to figure out I don't know if we're gonna continue on with him for this next one, because we may be going to work with Greg Hedson again, to bang this one out. But I will definitely at some point in the future be doing stuff with him again. I think he's going out with Black Label Society again too, in between their little Pantera jaunts. So he's not even gonna have time. But he is a great producer. His studio is A1 and his rates are pretty good. So I actually do recommend him to any musicians who are looking for like high level recordings at good prices.
Style wise, I forgot to ask you this. What would you say Hope Fiend is like musically?
So the interesting thing about Hope Fiend is that on the first EP, we kind of cobbled that together, because a lot of those songs are older songs that I've done before, except for two, sorry. And they were songs we played in that first set when we opened up for Suicidal Tendencies. And I had gone into my Year of the Dragon archives, and it was stuff we had never recorded. So I recorded it, and it sounds a lot different from where we're going to go next. Like, I would say right now, I love the EP and what it was for where we were at that time, but the next one is going to be heavy hardcore. It's going to be we're going to take on that Bad Brains tradition of no more than minute and a half songs in some
Yeah.
cases, and I would say we are if you if so I would call us, as we stand right now, what we're recording, an even mix. If you took Fugazi, if you took the Brains, if you took Black Flag, uh, and if you took bebop jazz and threw them in a blender, and you would have Hope Fiend as we stand
Wow.
today in terms of what we're recording right now.
Man, I want to hear that. I like all of that. And bebop to me is the first punk rock. Like it
Like
made you
straight
listen.
up, straight
You know what I'm
up,
saying?
straight up, bro. And I can
Good.
promise you this: before there's a couple of people I always float studio stuff by before we release it. You will definitely be on that list.
Oh man, I would be honored, man.
Yeah, bro. I got you.
Well, shoot, man. I mean, I asked a lot of the questions. Anybody else have anything to say? And if not, we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I've been yapping so much. So if
No,
I
That's
apologize to anyone
awesome.
for being a long-winded old fart.
Nah, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, man. There's nobody on my side. I think we see some of the same people, but I'm not sure. Um, yeah, I don't see anything on my side.
Yeah, neither do I, man.
So,
Like, shoot. Well, here's something. What advice would you give, like, just in parting, like, what parting advice would you give your all of us?
so, um, the parting advice I would give for life or for music.
Oh, just in general, man. Life,
Um,
life, life, and music.
so in general, to people, no matter what your race, sex, creed, or religious belief is, to just try to go out in the world every day and make a difference for somebody. And I don't care if you buy a homeless guy a candy bar, or if you, and this seems like nothing, but even if you let somebody into a lane, they want to change lanes and you don't speed up, because you don't want them to change lanes, you want to cut them off, like just let them go in. Or if you're at the supermarket and you got a basket full of stuff and there's somebody behind you with just one item, just let them go first. Just little stuff to me like that can change hearts and minds more than you know. So that's my general advice to offer for Black people uh, who are doing this kind of music or living in an alternative culture uh, where people quote unquote say that's not Black or you're not Black. The overriding message I have is live your life. Um, you decide for you what being Black means, and don't let anybody ever try to hang that label on you, especially in relation to negative stuff like, if you don't curse enough, you're not Black. If you don't do this, you're not Black. If you don't fight or whatever, you're not. Don't let anybody hang those labels. Only you can decide what is Black and what is not for you. Nobody else. No other Black people, not even white people were like, oh, you're different from the other. No, you're not. No, I'm Black. I'm still a Black man in America. I'm not different from any others.
Nope.
How I express myself and what you see may look different. You may be fooled by my proper speech. You may be fooled by the ideas that I present to you, but trust and believe. I don't see myself as being any different whether I have a mohawk or whether I'm bald or no matter what it is. I am still a Black man, and I still recognize myself as that, and that I am in the struggle with other Black people. So don't let anybody of any race decide for you what being Black means, because they generally just want to keep you in a box, and it is time to blow up that box and be able to exist as you want to and recognize yourself as being Black in the way that you want to and nobody else.
That's real. Well, shoot, you guys. Here we go again. Black History of Rock and Roll, celebrating Black History of Rock and Roll Month with Rodcore. And happy birthday, brother.
Thank you
You
again.
know?
Appreciate you, and appreciate everybody. We've been on for a long time, so everybody that hung out or stuck with it, appreciate you all. Thank you for allowing me to be so long-winded.
Thank you, man, for coming on. And thanks for, what's this brother's name? Satora Woon Yakoba?
Sator, my
Thanks,
African brother
thanks for the compliment. Where's he from? It sounds like
from the
Nigerian.
Bay Area. He's
Oh,
a African by birth, but he's a Bay Area resident right now.
right on, right on, right on. Well, shoot. Thanks again, man. I'm honored that you came on, and shoot, man. We'll
Bro, I'm
rap some
honored you
more.
had me. Like
Oh
straight
man.
up, like for real. And hey, I'm gonna get on you. Put the link to the YouTube in your bio. Remember, this guy has a YouTube channel with other great interviews, a lot shorter than this one too. So you won't be on there as long as you'll be on this one. But put that link in your bio, sir, please.
Most definitely, man. Shoot. Well, thanks again. And here we go, you guys. Black History of Rock and Roll, Black History of Rock and Roll, Black History of Rock and Roll. Peace and God bless. You guys be safe.
God bless
Thanks to
you.
Rodcore.
Yes, sir. Have a good night. Bye,
Good night.
everybody.
See ya.